Hey there, if you're here for the first time. If you're coming back, welcome back. My name is still Alexander and I make free software to help Notion and Anki users all around the world be more successful in their learning journeys. I have a lot of thoughts on the topic we're going to go into. By the end of this talk, you will know why Notion to Anki is the future of Anki collaborative deck creation. What is possible today, right? You can go ahead on to Anki.net and then drop off your file, exported Notion page, and then convert that. Bam. And then you get your flashcards into Anki. So this is how it works today, right? You'll get your flashcards. It saves you a lot of time so you don't have to copy paste between Notion, right? In the next version of Notion to Anki, we're gonna implement synchronization. So what is synchronization? Well, so basically right now, what we're doing is we're using the exported HTML from Notion and then reading that. But instead, what we want to do is we want to take your Anki data and then your Notion data and then save you time by merging them. Anki plus Notion, and you don't have to do anything, no editing on your side, right? So you would basically, I don't have a demo prepared for it. I was considering making a videos to show you what happens so it's easier to understand, but basically you would write something in Notion, right? Combero is founded in, right? So you would be able to edit here and then the change would just show up here in Anki. So that's what I mean with synchronization. And right now, there is a new API for Notion, so we can use that API to consume this page programmatically, right? So APIs would just enable you to speak with these different programs without, for example, knowing much about how the program is written and so on. Of course, one challenge we have right now with Anki is that I don't know much about the data structures in Anki. So that's something I'm looking into learning. The Notion API is documented, so I'm learning about all of the different terminology inside of the Notion API. So for example, the blocks. So Notion has these blocks, right? Notion blocks. We can use the IDs. I don't think I can show it here, but everything you look at here, like this has an ID, this has an ID, the image has an ID, but we're using the unit in Notion to Anki for flashcards is the toggle. So this is the front, and then what's inside is the back. So this thing here has an ID, and we can use that in order to figure out what is what. And that way we can update the content, right? So we can only change what has changed. So the two approaches I've been thinking about now is like I have two plans, like plan 1 and then plan 2. So as you probably can guess, the plan 1 is to use the Anki API. Anki doesn't technically have a public API, but it has something called AnkiWeb. So if I try to hit the Y here, and try to synchronize, it's going to say account required, a free account, blah, 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 keep your collection synchronized. If we can read from that API, so I'm going to hit the Y now, you can see this is my private collections. So it's syncing all of my decks, and the AnkiWeb service has an API. So that's what I'm thinking we can use. So that would be plan 1, right? AnkiWeb plus the Notion API. If we can do that, then we can eliminate the manual, what do you do with Notion to Anki, right? You have to, the step, again, I'm repeating all of these steps just to show you how painful it is. You click the export, you export a page, you can see it takes time. Like if you have a huge database, it's gonna take even longer. If you have many images, many attachments, it's gonna take even longer. And then you click the file there, export, you can see. So this is a very manual process, right? So if we can use AnkiWeb and the Notion API, then we can eliminate that manual crap. It can be transparent. So transparent means that the user doesn't have to do anything other than have an account here, right? So the way I was thinking with this plan 1, right, is to, so initially I was thinking a desktop app, right? We can have a desktop app and it would wire everything up, right? So the desktop app talks to the APIs. That's what I'm thinking, right? It's simple. So, but the problem, downside is you would have to have a desktop app, or it doesn't have to be necessarily a desktop app, but it has to be some kind of long-living process, right? So if you don't understand what I mean by long-living process, is like usually they're called daemons. So it's a program that just is running all of the time on your computer. So either when your computer starts up, the program starts automatically, and so many things, like when you're using a regular computer, you have different kinds of programs running. Like one thing is the graphics server thing that's responsible for drawing stuff on screen, and I guess a scheduler, something that starts other programs and so on. This is something we could set up. I don't know, it could be headless. It doesn't have to have a user interface like a desktop app, but a desktop app would be much nicer, I think, because then we could expose various things, right? You shouldn't need to, but you could configure the desktop app or the daemon, the process, the thing that handles the synchronization, to tell it what to do, and the desktop app would give us a user interface for that. But the downside with the desktop app is that Notion to Anki can be used by mobile users, right? We do have users who are on Android phones and they do stuff. So I actually do want to preserve that. Mobile users, we do want people who are on Android to continue using the project, and people on iOS. And if we make it a desktop app, it wouldn't be usable on mobile then. So we could make it a hybrid app, like some kind of hybrid app that works both on desktop and mobile, right? Because then iOS users, Android users, and so on could continue using it. Those are the approaches around Plan 1. Of course, if I need to ask upstream, like I need to ask the Anki creator if it's okay that we use the AnkiWeb service. So we would essentially be, if we get permission, then we can use this, right? Then we can, let's say Damien, who's the creator of Anki, let's say Damien says yes. You guys can use AnkiWeb. Then we would essentially have our own client, right? Let's call this N2A client. So N2A client would handle everything, regardless of it being a desktop app, hybrid app, whatever, right? N2A client would handle communication between AnkiWeb and Notion API, and it would be transparent. So this is if we can get this working, it's going to be magic. That's the approach I've been thinking about, and the prototypes, the proof of concepts I've surrounded around, I think that's the way. And we really do want to try to integrate with AnkiWeb, because like the downside to manipulating the database is that it's dangerous. Like I initially a few weeks back, I was thinking, hey, let's manipulate a SQLite database. Let's read and write. That's really a bad idea. It's really stupid, because like imagine you have one program reading from the database, and then you have another program writing to the database, and then you have another program writing to the database. Like what can happen in practice is that we can get in a really bad situation, essentially corrupt data, where we totally corrupt the database and so on. So we definitely should not try to circumvent the Anki desktop app and read and write directly to the database. It's a terrible idea. So that's what I'm worried about. I did initially want to directly talk to the Anki database using like some kind of SQLite or RAM wrapper, but I think it's dangerous. We can't do that. It's a bad idea. At least because the user might be editing something in the database while we try to synchronize. So that's why we should try to get a client which respects the rules, right? So that would be, in the case of AnkiWeb, it would mean to log in and then do the synchronization. So if we can use the AnkiWeb API, and then we are an approved client, and then we read and write to the AnkiWeb whenever you make changes, I don't really see any downs. Or actually, if you're using the AnkiWeb desktop app, okay, this is a downside. You would have to manually synchronize here, which is basically one key, guys. It's one key. You press the Y button and then it's synchronized. I don't really consider this a huge downside. This is not bad. Of course, you could say, hey, Alexander, why don't you make an Anki add-on? And we're going to get to that. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about the Anki add-on stuff. So But I don't really consider this a huge downside. Some people might say, yeah, Alexander, it's not automatic. You're pressing the Y button. But look at this. How fast is this? You press the Y button, a dialog shows up, and then it disappears. So I don't consider that to be a huge downside. Yeah, so that's the plan 1. And I hope we can get this approach, because this is going to be transparent, essentially. Plan 2, rely on the APKG format. So if we can't get the permission from the Anki creator, we don't want to get blacklisted and banned from using AnkiWeb, of course, guys. I don't want to encourage any bad behavior, right? Using a private API without is like in generally a bad idea. So if we look at the terms of service of Anki, right? Access to the service. You may access AnkiWeb directly through your browser through the synchronization functionality incorporated into the approved clients. So you can see there is 4 clients, right? Approved ones. Anki, that's the official desktop app. And then Anki Mobile, Anki Droid, and Anki Universal. I don't really know this last one, but I think it's a Windows project that got abandoned. I don't really know. But the 2 previous ones are iOS and then Android. So if we can get our N2A client approved, nice. And here it says, because other clients can cause problems, this is what we want to avoid. We definitely don't want to mess up people's decks, right? So have to be really careful to deploy this like in a sane and something that makes sense. So AnkiWeb does not currently allow access from browser extensions or other third-party clients, right? So this is the challenge, right? We just have to get blessings. Here it says, instead, please use AnkiWeb, which lets you modify your local connection over a WebSocket without any negative impact on AnkiWeb. I don't really consider this, I will try it like in some prototypes, but I would preferably not want to require anybody to use Anki add-ons. And I posted on Twitter. Did you guys see it? So as it says there was somebody who posted, if you have any add-ons, do not update Anki today. I don't know the technical reasons why every Anki update breaks all the add-ons, but it does. I know that we've all been trained to update our software and devices as soon as the update is available, but that's not the best advice with Anki. Some of my add-ons only. So relying on the Anki add-on stuff, I don't believe in it, and I don't want to go in that direction, because it's most likely going to incur maintenance cost, and it's going to break, and you're going to have to constantly keep up with the development, I think, from what I've seen on the outside. And considering we're doing something with synchronization, I'm very worried about relying on the Anki add-on infrastructure. And I mentioned before on a podcast, on the Deep Weeb podcast, I think, I mentioned that somewhere in the documentation it says that add-ons are not officially supported. So that means that it's guaranteed essentially to break. So that's why, guys, that's why we don't want to. And then secondary, I think add-ons are complicated. Like, it's not fair to require users to have to go through that process, like at least new Anki users. So that's why I'm saying, let's not put that overhead on the user. Instead, let's try to find a way where we can make it so that they just have to click a few buttons and then it just works, right? Long living process that does all of the magic, and you just have to connect your accounts. That's the way, I think, right now. So Anki add-ons, it's too risky. Too risky. I hope I said it now enough times. Next time people keep asking, I'll link to this part. Let's assume for some reason we ask a client approval and the AnkiWeb says no, or the creator says no. Then our second plan is to rely on the APKG format, right? This format is reliable. There are decks out there in the wild. So what does that mean? Like, okay, first of all, let me just clarify, what does APKG mean? Do you guys know in the chat? Let me know in the chat if you guys know what APKG means. This keyword here. You guys know? Guessing Anki package. Yeah, that's close. That's close. But let's read here. This is from file info. File info. What is file info saying, guys? So they're saying that it's file type exported Anki flashcard deck. The developer is Damien Elmes. That's the creator of Anki. And basically what it is, it says it here. An APKG file is a custom deck of flashcards created for use in Anki, a flashcard-based studying program. It contains HTML data used for card presentation as well as text, images, and sounds. Users can create their own flashcards, decks, or import others by selecting the create deck or get shared buttons in the app, right? It's a binary format. It's a binary format which contains the text, the images, audio files, or whatever the user has in their collection. So if we go back here to the HTML test, basically we can export this and we get an APKG file. So this is what it is. It's nothing fancy. It's just a binary format. If you open that format, Anki can figure out, let's open it up and see what happens. It says notes found in file 30. It didn't create anything new because, again, let's look at that. If we open this file in Anki, it gives us a summary. It says identical. Can you guys see this? It says identical here on the left-hand side. Identical, identical. So it's not doing anything, right? If we can use the Notion ID, it will work. So I could create, okay, let's leave that there. Let's create a new profile and then call this profile editing the exports. Okay, we go into this profile, and if you don't know what profiles is, it's basically, it's like a user in Anki, right? You can whenever you start using Anki, you have the default profile, right, and the default deck. But you can create your own, you can give them names, and this one is called editing the export. So it's different from the other. You will get your own data. So if we open this collection again here, you can see this time, okay, I did it too fast, guys. I'm sorry. Let me slow down. I'm moving too fast. It says notes found in file 30. Notes added from file 30, right? Added, and so on. Okay, cool. So let's try opening it again, right? Oh, sorry, guys. I'm moving too fast. I need to slow down. Notes found in file 30. And then it says notes skipped as they are already in your collection 30, right? So Anki can figure out if stuff is in there, right? Using this APKG format. So it's reliable. So if we go ahead and look at this and edit this one, let's say amazing 21 basic avocado, and then add a 21 here at the end. Okay, close that. And then let's export this. Export, and then let's call it HTML test 2.1. Okay, we exported that, 32 cards exported. Now let's change our profile to HTML test and then try to open it. What do you think is going to happen this time? So we'll open this one. And then, okay, let's look at the summary. It says notes found in file 30. Notes updated as file had newer version 1. Notes skipped as they're already in your collection 29, right? Okay, only one, because we edited one. So it's going to create this one, updated. Sorry, it didn't create it, it updated. And why did it update it? It's because the IDs match, right? The IDs match, it updated it. Nice. And no new cards were created. So this is what I'm saying, guys. The APKG format is stable. It's safe. It's reliable. What we can do is we can basically implement plan 1, right? But instead use the APKG format, right? So basically update everything reliably in Anki. There's no dangers with the database corruption situation. So I think this is a safe plan 2. And it's not going to require that much work, right? We just have to produce APKGs and then open them up and then let Anki deal with the diffing, because we have to make sure that we don't end up in a corrupt situation, right? In a situation where the data is missing or data is wrong or we delete stuff or we can't open your collection anymore because something got corrupted. So relying on the APKG format, I think that's a second good way, right? We would still need something that talks to Notion and produces APKG, then opens so Anki can diff / merge, update, blah, 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 right? So that's it. That's the 2 plans we have. And also some keywords here. APKG, it's heavily used. There is an ecosystem, right? There is many decks existing from before. So if we provide a safe way to go from APKG to Notion, then we can reuse a lot of the existing decks. Let's just pick Arabic here, for example. You can see there's lots of decks. And regardless of you thinking it's good or bad to use them, there is value here for people who just want to reuse the existing decks, right? So if we can support EPKGs, like take your EPKG and then import it to Notion, That would be nice, right? And then you would export, and then of course you have to make sure the IDs match. So the way I'm thinking is using Notion IDs, but the problem, okay, what is the downside with the APKG approach here? It's one way, right? One way, Notion to Anki, right? That's what it is. But this approach here, the plan one, is two-way. Bidirectional syncing, right? It would be like this. You can essentially change something in Notion and then it changes in Anki. But that's not possible with this format. You could get it to work, but I still think it's too dangerous. Because why is it dangerous? Because you would have to map out everything in Notion. In Anki, you can create any kind of HTML you want, but that's not the case in Notion, right? In Notion, you have the various blocks. So if you look here in this HTML test, right? So here are all of the defined blocks in Notion, right? It's defined, predefined. Notion handles the ID generation. But the problem with, if we go download a shared deck, let's find something else. So let's pick Korean here, okay? Top 100 Korean words. Actually, this is very simple. It's not that exciting. We can look at it. So you can put anything you want here in the HTML. You could write paragraph, cool, right? You could use B, which is bold, not recommended to use this tag. But so essentially you would have access to any HTML tag you want. So we don't have IDs on those. We could use some kind of hashing strategy and then hash those and generate IDs from that. But it's like, the nice thing with like, the reason why the one way would work is the Notion is handling all of the ID generations, right? So you would have the IDs. The problem we have, if we're coming from an existing APKG file, it will already have an ID, right? So it will already have predefined what the ID is. So it's kind of, if we look, we can try looking at, we'll open up the database. What's the name? It has to be, yeah, there it is, Anki, okay. So you can see there is a database here on file. This, I think we want Anki 2. Anki 2. Every profile has a directory here. So Alamayo, my directory, and then the one that is editing the exports. I think, which one is this? HTML test. Okay. So here's the HTML test profile. You can see there's a collection and so on. So we'll open up the collection. So you can see it says could not open database file. Reason database is locked. So dangerous to do stuff now. We could get into a corrupt situation and we don't want that. So let's close that. Anki, and now the database is not locked anymore, so we'll try to open it up. And let's look at the collection. Yeah, so you can see here's the database structure, and then let's browse. A table in this database requires blah blah, we don't care. Go away, we don't care. Let's look, so let's try to find one of the nodes we have. So here you can see, here is the nodes, right? We have the Korean, here's the one we edited, right? The cool boldface. You can see here's an ID generated, right? So the IDs already exist from before. So this is the challenge, right? If we have a source of truth, Notion, we generate IDs and then get them into Anki and then continue using the IDs from Notion. Then in plan one, we can implement bidirectional syncing. But here comes the challenge. Let's say for some reason you have 10,000 flashcards existing from before and you want to get those into Notion, right? The problem there, guys, is this ID. This is the deal breaker. This is what we have to figure out. This is currently the big challenge we have if we're going to get this to work. This is the challenge right now. Like getting Notion to Anki to work with synchronization for the cards you create from Notion, that we have figured out. That problem is solved. No fancy stuff. We just have to synchronize into Anki and then that's it, right? Because when we read back from Anki later, we will have the ID, which is this one. And if it's generated from Notion, right? No problem. This one is from AnkiWeb, so we don't know how the ID generation is done. But let's open up the HTML, or actually, do we have it here? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here. Here is one of the cards that's generated from Notion to Anki. You can see HTML, and the IDs here look much more similar. Do you guys see that? And that's because they're using the... No, actually, let me correct myself. They're using a different... I haven't actually... In the beta, the private beta, we're using a different thing. But here, the card option is actually not available. So the ID is coming from hashing all of the fields. That's why they look so similar, right? The hashing of all of the fields. So to summarize, we have to figure out a way to get the APKG IDs, like figure out a reliable way to use those. So that's something I haven't figured it out yet. So that's why this is a one-way sync, right? This would be a two-way sync because like the APKG situation is not really there because you are creating your own nodes. We know where you are. We can just, every time you create something in Notion, let me actually show it to you guys. Can I open this file up? I'll just show it because it's much more, it's easier visually to see it. It's not that easy when I'm just talking about it like this. Open with BB Edit here. And then let's actually format this. Can we format this? Pretty print. So this is the HTML content of an export. And in the API I've seen it, so it's essentially the same. So they're using, thank God, they're using the same approach. So you can see here's an ID. This is generated. It's GUID, globally unique identifier. So everything here in the payload has an ID. So we have a globally unique identifier. So we can figure out what is this thing. And if we create a flashcard from this, we are able to always know it's the same thing. So if you change this in Notion here, if you create a toggle there, so this card has an ID right now. And this ID will be the same regardless of what happens inside of here, right? Anything goes, right? It doesn't matter if there's an image here, this way, right? It's so reliable, right? It doesn't matter what is there. You added image, so what? The ID was created when this thing was created, most likely. I don't have access to the Notion source, so I can't really say that for sure. But when we have these IDs, we're able to reliably update stuff, right? So when we go from APKG, we don't know how the IDs were generated. They're coming from a third, like, yeah, I don't know. Like maybe the person used some tool to generate their cards. Maybe they generated them manually or like created them manually. So it's kind of difficult to know because you have to, if you're importing, exporting, you have to have a way to connect them. That's the gist of it. Is anything unclear? My throat is getting a little bit sore, guys. I'm talking so much. Let me have some hot water. How is everybody doing? So that's basically the thoughts I had around this. The Notion API will enable us to read and write data, right? Anki does not have an API, but like it doesn't have a public API, but it does have AnkiWeb. So AnkiWeb is the closest thing we'll get to synchronizing into Anki without having to require some extra crap on the user side. So that's it. I think if we get that, we will definitely manage to introduce something really cool, because Notion to Anki gonna change the Anki collaborative deck creation space. I think Notion is the tool for this, right? If I log out, so we can look at this. Okay, so this is what they are saying on their website. All in one workspace. One tool for your whole team. Write, plan, and get organized, right? For teams and individuals, right? You can use it to create a wiki for your stuff. You can use it for project management tasks. You can use it for your notes. Medicine students use it for notes, and also other students. You can see it's used by some big companies and so on. So nice. We'll move on from that. And this is where it gets interesting, right? it has support. You can do collaboration in real time with Notion. It works. It has this commenting system. You can comment in any page. You could work together with some people and then create like lots of information. You don't have to like do everything yourself. You can, if you're studying, you can go together with your classmates. You can set up a Notion workspace, let's say biology study space or our semester in this university, and then you could create pages, you could create structures, you could invite somebody in. You see here, you can make it publicly available, share your stuff, or share it only to specific people. So Notion has this stuff built in. The collaboration feature in Notion is already in place. So we don't have to invent this stuff. We don't have to create it. It works. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's very easy to use, and I think this is definitely gonna make it easier for people to do collaborative deck creation or create a wealth of knowledge together. So that's it, guys. I definitely think Notion is going to be much better than anything else you've seen. I haven't used all of the available tools out there for collaborative deck creation, but this is probably going to be the best one if we can get the automatic synchronization part working correctly, right? So you can see how easy it is to use. I have seen the Anki, I think it's called Anki Crowd something. I did try it out, and to be honest, guys, it's too much work. And yes, you can use a GitHub repository and all of that stuff, but it's too much work. Normal people are not going to use that. So this is what they're going to use. It's all in there in Notion. You can do the collaboration stuff. You can work all on your own. You can provide access to people. It's very easy to create pages. It's very easy to write. So yeah, that's my tech talk on why I believe that the future of Anki collaborative deck creation is Notion to Anki. Thank you for attending my talk.